Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse 15. Tano bhavan vai bhagavat pradano mahattam aikanta parayanasya Hare udaram charitam vishuddham Susrusatam no vitanotu vidvan. Tat. Therefore, no, of us, Bhavan, your good self, Vai, certainly, Bhagavat, in relation with the personality of Godhead, Pradana, chiefly, Mahattama, the greatest of all of the greats, Ekanta, exclusively, Parayanasya, of the shelter, Hare, of the Lord, Udaram, impartial, Charitam, activities, Vishuddham, transcendental, Susrusatam, those who are receptive, Na, ourselves, Vitanotu, kindly describe, Vidvan, O learned one. Translation, O Sutta Goswami, you are a learned and pure devotee of the Lord, because the personality of Godhead is your chief object of service. Therefore, please describe to us the pastimes of the Lord, which are above all material conception, for we are anxious to receive such messages. Purport: the speaker on the transcendental activities of the Lord should have only one object of worship and service, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the audience for such topics should be anxious to hear about him. When such a combination is possible, namely a qualified speaker and a qualified audience, it is then and there very much congenial to continue discourses on the transcendence. Professional speakers and a materially absorbed audience cannot derive real benefit from such discourses. Professional speakers make a show of Bhagavata Saptaha for the sake of family maintenance, and the materially disposed audience hears such discourses of Bhagavata Saptaha for some material benefit, namely religiosity, wealth, gratification of the senses, or liberation. Such Bhagavatam discourses are not purified from the contamination of the material qualities. But the discourses between the saints of Naimisharanya and Sri Sutta Goswami are on the transcendental level. There is no motive for material gain. In such discourses, unlimited transcendental pleasure is relished both by the audience and by the speaker, and therefore they can continue the topics for many thousands of years. Now, Bhagavata Saptahas are held for 7 days only. And after finishing the show, both the audience and the speaker become engaged in material activities as usual. They can do so because the speaker is not Bhagavat Pradana and the audience is not Susrusatam, as explained above. Translation, O Sutta Goswami, you are a learned and pure devotee of the Lord because the personality of Godhead is your chief object of service. Therefore, please describe to us the pastimes of the Lord, which are above all material conception, for we are anxious to receive such messages. So this is a form of a request to Sutta Goswami to hear topics of the Lord or activities of the Lord. This, of course, is one of the 6 questions. What are the pastimes of the Supreme Lord? that they originally asked in the beginning of their conversation. So again here they're asking Sutta Goswami to enlarge upon the pastimes of the Lord. Already we see some pastimes of the Lord and pastimes of the devotees related to the Lord described, all about Parikshit and Yudhisthira and others. But this actually is just the introduction, and later on we'll find more detailed description. There are different types of charitam, or activities of the Lord. There are general activities, like the Lord is the creator, and therefore in the third canto and the fourth canto we get a discussion of how Mahavishnu glances over Prakriti and creates the material universes, and then Garbhodaksha Vishnu enters, and then from him comes Brahma, and Brahma makes all the planetary systems which are described in the fifth canto. So this is one type of activity of the Lord. Basically we call these the activities of Paramatma, the form of the Lord related to the material world. But it's also an activity of the Lord, so therefore it's spiritual, it's not material. But these are actually secondary to the other activities of the Lord, which we are familiar with. That is Krishna playing with the cowherd boys, or Krishna in the Ras Leela, or Krishna lifting Govardhana hill. So these are the activities that the devotees really relish. So these are the primary objects of listening for the devotees. So both are necessary, but nevertheless the devotees are more attracted to these activities of the Lord in the spiritual world. So the Lord is distinguished when he does these two things. He's called Paramatma when he's dealing with the material world, and he's called Bhagavan when he's simply associating with his devotees. So all the activities in the 10th canto related to Krishna and Vrindavan and Mathura and Dwarka, these are the activities of Bhagavan. Or the activities of the Leela avatars, like Ramchandra, these are the activities of Bhagavan. But then the activities of, in the third and fourth canto, where Mahavishnu and Garbhodaksha Vishnu and Kshirodag and Vishnu, they do activities in relation to the material world. These are activities of Paramatma. So the devotees are more interested in the activities of Bhagavan. However, the Bhagavatam, in spite of the fact that, of course, Bhagavatam does describe all the activities of the different forms of the Lord, like the Leela avatars also, still the activities of Krishna, the charitam of Krishna, they are considered to be the most excellent. They are the best of all. Why? Because Krishna himself is the best of all. He is Bhagavan Swayam. So this is the whole theme of the Bhagavatam ultimately. And these activities are described in the 10th canto. So the immediate question is, well, if that's so, then why do we have to just read the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth canto? Why do we have to do that? 11th canto, 12th canto, just read 10th canto. But we see that's also not proper, and Srila Prabhupada also mentions that you can't just go directly to the 10th canto. And our acharyas also say the same thing, that the whole Bhagavatam is worthy of study. And even if the first canto and part of the 12th canto are not actually recited by Sukadev, in other words, the Sutta Goswami discussing here, and at the end still, it's Bhagavatam, so it is sacred, and you hear it and you study it and you understand everything. So they don't make any, the acharyas don't make any distinction between the parts of the Bhagavatam. You should read it all. Nevertheless, some portions are more attractive to the devotees, so the activities of Bhagavan are there, and the activities of Krishna in the 10th canto are there. Therefore, we find even Prabhupada, he wrote the Krishna book, which is a summary of the 10th canto, before he actually translated 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th canto. He did that first. So he said, yes, that is true. Actually, you should go through the thing. But at the same time, if it's explained nicely, it's good. So that indicates that he was interested also in the main object, that is the activities of Krishna. And we should know about those activities. So those are the other charita. In all cases, all of these things, whether it's the activities of Paramatma, the activities of the avatar forms, or the activities of Krishna, they're all Vishuddham. They're all completely pure. They're not just Suddha in the sense of Sattva-gun, which is relatively pure, predominated by Sattva with less Rajas and Tamas. No, this is completely pure. So in other words, it doesn't belong to the material world at all, these actions. They're different. Huh? So we have the word Vishuddham here. Shuddha means pure. Vishuddha also means pure, but Vi often means Vishesha. And Vishesha means special or particularly. So, or very pure. So, particularly pure, especially pure, highest purity, or a very special type of purity. That's the Vishuddham. That's in other words, it's spiritual and it's not material at all. So that's the indication. So the activities of the Supreme Lord, the activities of Hare, are not material. Of course, there can be an objection there also. Activities belong to the material world, and activities have a beginning and end. If something is spiritual, it should be eternal, no beginning and end. So therefore the Lord shouldn't have any activities. So this, of course, is the argument given by Mayavadi philosophers, that the Lord has no actions. So he doesn't create the material world, he doesn't destroy it, because he should have no actions. Actions have a beginning and an end. The Lord should be eternal. So no actions. And so that's a good argument, and we see that action, when we talk about action, creation of the material world, for instance, yes, there's a beginning, and there's then first the Lord does this, then he does this, then he does this. First he glances, then after he glances, then he enters into the Prakriti, and then he does it, then he enters into all the jivas. So there's a whole time sequence there related to the Lord's activities. So they have a beginning and they have an end. The Lord glances, that gets finished. Then he enters into Prakriti, that's finished. Then he enters into the jivas. So it looks like the Lord is temporary and limited, because he's just like a material being who has activities in this world. So this is a little confusing. So when even when Krishna is present, then when the demons see Krishna, and say, oh, look, he's acting like us. He's born like us. He's growing like us. He's fighting like us. And he even dies like us. He gets shot in the foot and he dies. He's a material being. So it's very easy to conclude that the Lord is material, if you have a material mind. So if you have a material mind, then you can't appreciate the Lord. So it will be difficult for people to accept this, and that's why many people become impersonalists. Actions are material. They have a beginning and end. Time is material, beginning and end. Qualities have a beginning and end in the material world. They're attached to the gunas of material nature. They're useless. So therefore we should have something with no qualities and no activity. That's the final goal, impersonal Brahman. Similarly, forms. Forms have a beginning. Forms have an end in the material world. We create something, and it gets destroyed. A child comes out of the womb, it's got a form. Eventually the child grows up, then the child dies, or the adult dies, and it's finished. So forms have a beginning and end also. So get rid of all that, then we have impersonal Brahman. And that becomes the goal of many people. So it's a simple solution to the material world. So it's a rare soul who can go beyond that and understand that, yes, form, qualities, and activities are material, and therefore worthy of rejection. But that doesn't mean that in the spiritual world there is no form and qualities, activities, as long as it's not material. So to make that jump and think of form, qualities, activities that are not material, that's a little bit of a jump to make logically for people. So they don't get that far. So this is a big problem for people, a stumbling block for people to accept the Supreme Lord with his form, qualities, and activities. So if one can accept it, then very good. Then, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, if you know my birth and my activities, janma and karma, if you know it, then you're free from the material world, no birth and death anymore. If you really can understand that there is a Supreme Lord who has form, qualities, and activities, and they're eternal, they're not material, then you're qualified for the spiritual world. Okay? So, of course, that's what a person will realize when they get to prema. Bhava, to some extent, and prema. Will realize that, yes, the Lord has these wonderful activities and form, etc., which are eternal. And in spite of the fact that the Lord does activities, it's still eternal. It may look like it has a beginning and end, but it's not. It's not like the material world. So he understands something beyond time and space of this material world. Okay? But that's high realization, prema, or bhava or prema. So before that, we're still stuck with our conceptions about time and space. So when we think of Krishna, we hear his activities, and we get kind of caught up in the normal conceptions we have of time and space and beginning and end, etc. So it's very difficult for us to accept some things. So the activities of the Bhagavatam look extraordinary sometimes and unusual and whatever. And we see that there's a description of the number of people in Dwarka. It looks like it's impossible to have so many people stuck there in that little city, which wasn't that big actually. Or in Vrindavan itself, there were 3 billion gopis and 3 billion Krishna in the Ras Leela in a circle within one little forest. How is it possible when the whole, Rajamandala is not that big either? But you could put 6 billion people in there, besides the other people, the billions of cowherd boys and the calves and the cows. How does it all fit in that one little place? No, it looks imaginary to us. So we'll have many descriptions in the Bhagavatam that look a little bit incredible for us, and we can't figure them out because the sizes and the numbers are extraordinary in some cases. And then again, the time, we have all these things like the whole day of Brahma, which is extraordinarily long, and then we have our modern scientists that say that at a certain time we got the Neanderthal man, which is how many thousands of years ago. So we're struggling with thousands, not with millions of years, but yet one yuga cycle itself is over 4 million years, and we have people all through there, and this goes on for 1,000 times in one day of Brahma. So it's very, very different from this archaeological history of mankind. It's very different from what's in the Bhagavatam. So very difficult to understand. And this, of course, is not even spiritual things. It's talking about material world and everything. Even that is very difficult to understand. And of course, then we got the whole universe and the structure of the universe and Bhumandala and Mount Meru, also difficult for people to understand, and they'll say, well, it's so contrary, how can we accept this? So then maybe some parts of the Bhagavatam that describe the material world are not true or whatever, exaggeration, something like this. So very difficult for us. Some things about material descriptions, and then other things on the spiritual level, even more difficult. So that's because we have limited material conceptions and vision and whatever in our mind. We're very, very limited. And of course we can expand that even materially. We can expand our consciousness materially a little more. And that's what we think is progress, material progress, when we discover something new invention, and now we're into the internet age and electronics and all this sort of stuff, and then we get into quantum physics, and that's a little bit of an expansion of the material mind, where you're getting a little more abstract and things are not so material as we thought they were. But then if we go further, then we'll see that Bhagavatam explains matter in such a way that we don't even see matter, because all the elements are invisible. The pure element of water is not this water, and the pure earth is not this earth, it's something else. So actually all the material elements described, the 24 elements described in the Bhagavatam, are all invisible to us. We don't even know what they are. So modern science is dealing with something else, a combination of all that. That's all, and which is visible. So that's material energy itself is invisible. But if we advance materially, of course, then we could possibly get a little higher and then begin to appreciate the more subtle material energy of this world. And that's maybe the hope of science, that it will get to a little bit higher level and understand that the present conceptions are quite limited and prejudiced, and go beyond that. But that's still material, but that gives us an opportunity to understand that we're very limited, so even materially speaking. So what to speak of making that jump to the spiritual world and then understanding Supreme Lord there. So it takes some jump in our mind to do that. So that's what we call faith. That's the qualification for a devotee. For somebody doing jnana or yoga, they don't require that type of faith. But for a devotee, they require that faith to make that big jump from the material world to something completely different, the spiritual world, which is so much different. Where everything is beyond this time and space, but yet it looks like it's in time and space. So to make that jump is something that one has to do, and That is what we call faith. A person who begins the process of bhakti is qualified by faith. That means that when he reads the scriptures, the bhakti scriptures, then he doesn't question it. He accepts it. Okay, must be true. I don't understand how it's true, but I'll accept it's true, even if it looks too far out or too impossible or whatever. Accept it. Now, explanation for all this that we use, and that is, the Lord has inconceivable Shakti. So therefore, we can never, underestimate the powers of the Supreme Lord and what He can do. He is unlimited in all ways. So therefore, we simply have to accept that everything is not subject to our limited type of logic that we have at the moment. And the Lord can do things which look impossible to us, but it's done by the Lord very easily. He can do the impossible, what we think is the impossible. So that is the acceptance of the devotee who begins devotional service, Shraddha. He has that faith. And based on that, then he can develop nicely. If that faith is firm, then he can hear properly and accept what is given. So here we have the sages. They are described as sasrusatam, those who are obedient. That means they don't challenge what is said. They'll accept it. And so this is the basic qualification of a disciple or a devotee who is accepting knowledge. We see in Bhagavad Gita that the person is a tattvavit. He has knowledge, and the person who is receiving the knowledge is he has pranipatena, which pranipat. Pat means to fall, like patita pavana, fallen person is pata. Nipata means to fall down. And pranipat, pra means prakrishta, very much fall down. So the disciple very much falls down, which means he lies flat on the ground in front of the guru, and in front of the teacher, which means they're very submissive. He's willing to accept what the teacher says. Then he can get knowledge. And if he's not in that mode, he keeps challenging everything, he'll never get any knowledge. He'll challenge everything with his mind. So he has to accept, I know nothing. We often see like Rupert and Sanatan, they went to Lord Chaitanya and they're saying, please accept us, we're so fallen and miserable and whatever. And it's described, they came with grass in their mouth. Now somebody asked, is that literal? I don't know, but it's a common expression, so it comes up in the different poetic works also, where the devotee says, with grass in my mouth I approach you, and like this. So that's a sign of great humility, like a very fallen person who's lying on the ground with some grass in his mouth, like a cow or something. So anyway, one has to approach very humbly and submissively. So that's what the sasrusatam means. They don't challenge. They have the faith and they're willing to accept everything that is said. That's one qualification of the disciple, the one who wants to understand. The other, of course, is the thing mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita is pariprashna. Prashna means a question. Pari means thorough. Like parityajya in the end of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, give up everything completely and surrender to me. Sarva dharma parityajya. So that pari means completely. Reject completely all other dharmas. So pariprashna means complete questioning, thorough questioning. So which means that the person going for knowledge should have a desire for that knowledge, that particular knowledge. If he has desire for other things, that's not good. He may have other questions. Those are not the right questions. Desire for what the guru can give, for what the person can give, that type of spiritual knowledge, that should be the in the mind of the disciple. He has to be very inquisitive for that and desiring to know these things. Ultimately, how to advance in devotional service, how to attain the status of being a devotee of the Lord. So that's the question in the mind of the disciple, not the material questions like where is my money or how do I get married and all these things. So that, you don't go to the guru for that. You go for purely spiritual things. So that's how the relationship is established, by being very inquisitive to know about, and then if you're inquisitive, then you can get something. If you're not inquisitive and the guru says something, you won't even listen. So you're eager for it, eager for the knowledge, then you receive the knowledge nicely. You're attentive. Therefore, the sages here are saying, yeah, vitanotu, you should give this to us. Please, we want to know more. We want to understand about the activities of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So they are inquisitive to know about the activities of the Lord, which are pure spiritual activities, not material activities. That's the other quality of the devotee. And then as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the speaker must be qualified also. If we have very qualified people listening and we don't have a qualified speaker, what's the use? They won't get the knowledge that they're looking for. So the person has to be qualified who's speaking. So here they address Sutta Goswami as Vidvan, possessing knowledge. He's a tattvavit. He knows the truth. He has the proper knowledge. He understands the spiritual nature of Krishna's activities. So he's qualified by having that knowledge. And how does he get that knowledge? Not just book knowledge, but real knowledge. He's described as Bhagavat Pradhana, which means that his principal interest is the Supreme Lord, which means pure bhakti. No other desire except the desire to please the Lord. Basically, that's what this means, Bhagavat Pradhana. So he has pure devotion and he has knowledge. These two things go together. One can have the beginning, one can practice pure bhakti and be called a pure devotee, according to the definition given by Rupa Goswami of Uttama Bhakti. So we can start that process. Someone can tell us, okay, don't have any other desires. And then you engage in hearing and chanting and do all these activities. Okay, so you're called a pure devotee at that stage. Doing sadhana. We're not really pure because we do have anarthas, but at least we're following the process of pure bhakti to get to the highest bhakti prema. So you're called a pure devotee there. But in order to continue that practice, you need knowledge. So it's not just the devotion. I'm going to practice pure devotion. You need the knowledge in order to do that pure devotion properly. So you have to understand something about the nature of the Lord, that he is not material, that his activities are not material, that he doesn't have a material body, that he's not limited like us. So we do need some knowledge also. So therefore the qualified speaker has the knowledge and he is a devotee of the Lord. He has not got mixed motives in his presentation. So this is the qualification mentioned here. Prabhupada in the purport also mentions about the Bhagavat Saptaha, which means 7 days of recitation of the Bhagavatam. And he mentions not only here but in different places also, that, which generally means professional recitation of the Bhagavatam. So it is a custom among people in general that they claim themselves to be some sort of devotees or whatever. They're interested in hearing a Bhagavatam, this nice topic or whatever. So they gather together, they collect some money, and then they select their speaker among all the famous well-known speakers. They'll select some nice famous speaker and then they'll pay him to speak for 7 days on Bhagavatam. And basically they'll cover the whole Bhagavatam or the avatars, 10 avatars and things like that, and have stories based on Bhagavatam, but then they'll bring in other stories as well. A lot of these people, in the modern world at least, they're trained. There's special courses you can take. I think in Vrindavan they probably offer them also. So you can take the course, pay the money and take the course, then you learn all the things that you should speak about in these Bhagavad Saptahas, all the different little stories you tell. So you get trained up in that way, you know all the stories, you know the verses in the Bhagavatam, and then you go on speaking to people, and if you know that have the knowledge, plus you have a good delivery, you speak nicely, attractively, then people get attracted and they're impressed with this. And they have a custom there that they, after the lecture, then they come up and they start throwing money at the person. And he collects all the money and goes off. So as well as getting the money from the sponsor, he gets money from all the audience as well. And they are all grihastas, they're not renounced people, and this is how they survive. This is their profession, in other words. This is how they support their family. So that's what this is. So in one sense it's okay because it's about the Supreme Lord, whatever, but it's not good from the point of view of pure bhakti, which we follow. So in the Bhagavad Gita, the Nectar of Devotion there, among the angas of bhakti, mentioned 64 angas. The first 10 are surrender to a guru, take initiation, serve him, etc. And the second set of 10 things are the things you don't do. And one of them is don't study too many scriptures. So then the question is raised in the commentary, well, if we don't study Bhagavat scriptures, then how are we going to advance? We need knowledge. So this doesn't mean this. Don't study the other scriptures, non-bhakti scriptures like logic and Sankhya and things like that. And so impersonalism, don't study all those things. Another is that don't learn in order to make a profession of it. I want to learn all this so that I can become a good speaker and then I make money and then I can support my family. So that's bad motive. That's the material motive that's mentioned here. Bhagavad Saptaha, like that. The other is to learn all this so you can defeat everybody else and get a position. I'm a good speaker, I'm a good arguer, debater, etc. So that's also rejected. So this idea of being a professional speaker and using our pretense of being a devotee to make money to support ourselves is not pure bhakti. So that's why it gets condemned. Obstacle to bhakti. So that is what we have here. On the other hand, we have Sutta Goswami, who has the knowledge, and he's Bhagavat Pradhana. He has no other interests. He doesn't want to. He's not trying to support his family. And even if he goes on speaking for 1,000 years, it's not a problem. He just go on speaking. The Prabhupada also mentions, well, they speak for 7 days and then they're finished, and then they put it away for another year. They come back another year later, speak here for 7 days, speak for 7 days, and it's finished. So this is continual. They're speaking every day for 1,000 years, so this is much different, extraordinary. So this means that the speaker is inspired to go on for so long, and the audience is also inspired. Otherwise, if they're not both inspired, they won't continue. Either the speaker will stop or the audience will go away. But they both continue. Why? Because they're both qualified. They both have qualification. So that is, Prabhupada says, they should both be qualified. The audience should be anxious to hear, and the speaker has to have that knowledge of the Lord's activities and should be dedicated to the Lord in a very pure way. Bhagavat Pradhana. His only interest is Supreme Lord. Then we get a nice result from it. So very nice verse because it covers all these points that are very essential for our progress in bhakti. Okay, any question?
When the jiva starts bhakti, then he gets purified, then he gets shraddha, he gets faith. You said he doesn't question, he just accepts it. And what I've noticed, could be wrong, but oftentimes when someone comes to start bhakti, they're very enthusiastic about hearing about Krishna. But after a while they start liking their engagement, whatever it may be. And if the person is intellectually inclined, then the reading of the scriptures and hearing about Krishna's pastime will be predominant.
Yeah.
Whereas others, although they have that faith, their activity is other, and the hearing becomes just beautiful. Yeah, they will hear because they have to.
Oh, okay.
But nonetheless, they have that faith in Krishna, but it seems like the hearing part, if the person is either not intellectual inclined or whatever, he's kind of relegated to a dutiful level, rather than, as the jiva gets purified, he gets inspired.
Sure.
What is that?
Well, we have devotees at different levels, I suppose, and some will advance quicker than others, and some, due to their past gunas and karmas or whatever, will advance more slowly. So, nevertheless, to advance, then we do need Shravanam, Kirtanam, Sadhu Sangha. Very important. All of these important. We can't just have Kirtan, or we can't just have service in general. We do have to have the Shravanam and the Kirtan also. We can't reject those. So that's the process. So if we're lopsided like that, we continue for some time, but how much devotionally we can advance is another thing. Yeah? We can continue. We probably do service all of our life like that, but how much we actually advance in terms of developing more and more attraction for Krishna and ultimately realizing Krishna may be much slower. There's nothing wrong with it in one sense, because any service you can do good and have no offense, whatever, fine, but they'll be slower in progress. And those that hear properly, they become more enthusiastic to attain the goal. Because through hearing, ultimately, we get more enthusiasm to attain Krishna, and consequently to give up everything in the material world. So we get a little more energetic to do everything nicely and as perfectly as possible, and concentrate on the goal. The other person is casually going along and doing his activities, not thinking too much about it. So you can advance, but a little slower, yeah? But it's okay in one sense. It's better than not advancing or giving it up, but better if we go quicker. So if we follow properly, we get a quicker result. If we follow a little bit laxer, then we get a lax result.
In the beginning, in the Puranas especially, and you were talking about the inconceivable description, the descriptions that are inconceivable for the material mind to comprehend. And not only Srimad Bhagavatam, but all the Puranas, they kind of seem to follow the same thing, the Shaga, the Vishaka.
Yeah, they all have those 10 topics, or 5 topics, or 10 topics.
So they, from my reading, they tend to follow the same thing, but they describe the very, for the material mind. And in fact, I remember reading a long time ago that the British, of course, when they came to India, the politicians had it in mind to really smash down the Hindu belief and establish Christianity. So they had their scholars learn Sanskrit and study those scriptures, and especially they focused in on the Puranas because of all the inconceivable,
fairy tales
stories about it. So I mean, in one sense, it's kind of easy to say, well, it's just inconceivable. But I think, wouldn't it be that the acharyas take a lot of time to explain that principle of inconceivable? I mean, someone might say, well, okay, you can just throw out that line, oh, you can't think conceivable. But that doesn't mean that we should accept it.
That we also use against Shankaracharya, because he has this anirvachaniya. How does Brahman get divided up and become the jivas when it's indivisible? So he says, anirvachaniya, you can't speak about it. That's one answer. So we attack that as being an escape. It's just an escape word, because he can't solve the problem of how one Brahman becomes many jivas who are conscious also. So anyway, so we could say the same, okay, inconceivable like that. So we do have to be careful how we use the word, but nevertheless the idea about the Supreme Lord is that he's in the number one position, therefore he has all powers, and obviously the powers are going to be something that we can't even conceive of, so in that sense, inconceivable. So he can do remarkable things, that's one thing. The other is that in the scriptures themselves, we have various types of scriptures. So we have the Tamagun Puranas and the Rajas and the Sattva. Of those, the Sattvic are more reliable. The other ones are going to have stories which are maybe more fantastic and also not true in many ways. They're exaggerated sometimes. So we have to see that all the stories are not equal also. The stories about Vishnu, yes. The stories about Shiva and Brahma or Agni or any one of them, that we don't pay too much attention to. Those are to give faith to people on Tamagun and Rajagun for worshipping devatas, that's all. So we have to be selective on which ones we're going to take as real, real narrations, and those which are maybe fabricated or exaggerated, etc.
Well, I noticed that some of those scholars were focusing in on descriptions of ocean of milk and ocean of cheese.
Yeah.
This is preposterous, this is ludicrous.
Yeah. Well, even devotees, I think, we'll think, how can I have an ocean of liquor, or an ocean of where are the cows to make all the milk, and why doesn't it go rotten? The milk goes sour. Then you have to take it out and put some more milk in every day. Well, you have logical problems like that. Huh? So of course the TOB is supposed to solve those problems. I don't know if they're doing it, but my answer to that would be that we have different levels of meaning also, that we may not take things literally. It may have a symbolic meaning in some cases. As we see in some cases in the Bhagavatam itself, there's symbolic stories like Paranjana. But even there we can take in the description, there could be some, so it's ghee-like, or it's water-like, or it's like different densities of different things. So there can be materials, oceans or areas of different densities of matter, for instance. We want to call it ghee or milk or whatever, that's another thing, but just to designate them as being different in quality. And then let's say the different areas of the universe would be like that. So that's one way of looking at it. Sadhguru gave another version of it as being orbits of planets in relation to the Earth and things like that. So another thing. So there are ways of looking at it. But on the other hand, if you want to take Christianity, we can look at stories in the Bible, you can also start criticizing those stories and say they're fairy tales also. Same thing. You can do the same thing as well. Fantastic events taking place, and even the creation by God of the material world and the Garden of Eden and everything. It's all fairy tale also if you want to, so. We'll see in every scripture of the world probably you're going to have some more or less inconceivable or fantastic descriptions taking place. So it's accepted there in any religion. You're going to have that as well.
You quoted that very famous and you spoke about trying to understand Krishna. So, and you said that not until Bhav or Prem you'll realise this.
Yeah.
So, is there a difference between part of the question is the difference between realising and understanding, and also Srila Prabhupada. I mean, I'm sort of always been fascinated by that verse, because Srila Prabhupada quotes it quite a lot, and sometimes refers to it as well. And one time in London in '73, he said you have to fully understand Krishna, that's what it means. And then he paused for a moment and then he said it's not possible to fully understand Krishna. So it seems to, from devotee to devotee, that understanding of Krishna's Jnana and Karma is going to vary to some degree. So I guess I'm trying to understand that verse. But it says basically to understand Krishna, then you don't have to draw.
Well, we can say there's levels of understanding, but we have to at least get one level of understanding. So the highest level, of course, is the realization. So we realize Krishna. Then we know. We don't have to think about it anymore, about Janma and Karma at all, because we've realized what it means. It's quite. We don't have to explain it or anything. It's just a realization. And before that, we're doing sadhana bhakti. So we get knowledge from Bhagavad Gita, etc. So we accept it. The Janma and the Karma of Krishna are transcendental. They're not material. At least that we accept. We don't think they're material. Then it's beyond questioning that they're in the gunas or subject to material nature. So that's not the highest realization, but it's a good knowledge for us, and it directs us, points us in the right direction with that proper knowledge, so that we can get the realization of Krishna based on the knowledge we have. So that is what the scripture is there for the person doing sadhana bhakti. He doesn't obviously realize everything. He doesn't realize the pastimes of Krishna in the 10th canto, but we're directed towards that Krishna. And if we're not directed there, we don't attain it. Whatever you think of, you become. So if you're directed towards the wonderful form of Krishna, the dark blue in color with playing the flute, and we concentrate on that, and then we go to him. If we don't have any knowledge of what Krishna looks like at all, then we don't go to him. It's just like that. So the efforts of your mind to concentrate and go in the right direction by getting the knowledge of there, that's one level in sadhana. Then we get the realization of that in prema. So the two things go together, one leads to the other. So one level of knowledge is that of the sadhaka, the other is the realized knowledge in prema. But we can't say they're separate, that one leads to the other.
Just following up from the point that my son was making in your answer, and you were talking about oceans of milk and ghee and things like that. I was listening to a class from Greek Worker the other day, and he was talking about a kun in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
I can't remember whether he said that they meant there was hundreds of thousands, milk of 100,000 cows and milk of 300,000 cows. But it seems to me like if a king in this world can make a kun with the milk of 100 or 300,000 cows in it, and the scientists can figure out a way to make milk stay fresh or through various agencies, then if a Christian can make an ocean of milk,
He has nothing. Nothing, obviously.
An ocean of ghee or anything like that, there's nothing.
And preserve it forever without having to rot.
Rivers of mango juice and
Thank you for the class, Maharaj. This is a question. You're talking about the inconceivability in our minds of, the Lord in various aspects. Just from the third canto, we've been studying about Govardhana Vishnu, and it's explaining there how beautiful he is. The various hoods of Ananta with the golden crowns, etc., and his beautiful yellow dhoti ornaments. And then it's explaining that he has unlimited variegatedness and beauty. So I always kind of wonder about this variegatedness, because it seems like he has yellow dhoti, he has certain ornaments, shaped earrings, etc. And yet so many times you hear about his unlimited variegatedness. So just kind of wondering in what aspect
that again is, we can say, material versus spiritual. So material will say, okay, it's yellow and it continues to be yellow and it's yellow the next day and the next day and the next day, it's like that. Spiritually, whenever a person sees the Lord, it's ever fresh. It's like, this is remarkable. It's surprising each time. It's impressive each time, so it's ever fresh. So the yellow is yellow, but it's a different, it's a new experience each time. So it's not like the material world where yellow, okay, it's yellow, but it's continually fresh because it's spiritual. It's spiritual yellow, not material yellow. So there can be all variety within one object, even if it looks like, from our point of view, it's the same object. It's always different from the spiritual point of view, because that's the nature of spiritual things, that they're never tiring, they're always fresh.
In relation to what Ambika is saying, it's interesting to note that in the material world, we are conditioned by quantity, not so much by quality. But in the spiritual world, it's all quality, because Krishna is very small. So
true.
if we are into quantity, then Krishna is
big.
But Krishna is very small, and it seems like we are always in the spiritual world of the quality, whether in the material world of the quantity.
Or we can say it's the rasa. It's the rasa which is important. So the yellow or the peacock feather, the only significance in one sense is that it creates rasa, which creates bliss. So we get a feeling of love for Krishna out of everything that we see about Krishna. And that love is also ever fresh. It's new all times. It's never old, because that's the nature of the spiritual world. Sladini Shakti of Krishna operating.
You mentioned about the pure devotee, and the followers have to have the qualifications as well. Prabhupada said that you had no good fortune, I have created your good fortune. How do we understand that the potency of a preacher or the speaker can actually change the heart of someone who's unqualified, but they have certain qualifications?
So as I said, generally the faith, you have to develop faith in order to really accept and understand things. So, and that faith is usually created by previous births of Agata Sukriti. accidental or unintentional devotional service, and then because we're not interested in it anyway, so it's, we can say unintentional, and then eventually we get faith. The other way is sudden, as kripa. That a great devotee or the Supreme Lord gives extraordinary mercy, and suddenly you develop that faith, so that you accept and you respect, and then everything that they say you will accept nicely. So it can be sudden. It takes many births, whatever. But there's the exceptional cases also when we have great devotees. Hare Krishna.